Here's the thought, I don't think we need two Pokemon versions anymore. When you think about it, this gimmick feels really played out and not even that necessary in a modern time. However, a lot of the recent Pokemon games have been two versions only. I mean, we have to go back a decade to actually get to a single Pokemon game as like that enhanced version, but since then, the enhanced versions, the remakes and stuff like that, it's just been a dual release, and that's kind of why I'm going to break down this video. You know, the reasons why we don't really need it anymore compared to the reasons why we might have needed it when it first existed, because there was a time where Pokemon was about an interactive experience together. There also wasn't like an insane amount of people playing, well, at least like after the first generation. You know, everyone got in on the first generation, started to drop off from there, and then ever since like Gen 2 or 3, it's been increasing again slowly, and then just outperforming the previous games before it, because we've had some insane sales numbers. Pokemon X and Y, 12 million copies by April of the next year. So I mean, April 2014 compared to October 2013, 12 million copies for a 3DS game, and this is when this is actually a similar thing that we saw with the Nintendo Switch, that there still wasn't full massive 3DS adoption, and they actually released the 2DS to try to get more people to buy the 2DS. They had the console to play the new Pokemon game, so 12 million copies was very surprising. After that, a lot more people had 3DS, especially for the Super Smash Bros. Game, and that brought us to a crazy amount. Nintendo sold 14.69 million copies of Pokemon Sun and Moon in 44 days. So by the end of 2016, we had almost 15 million copies, thus showing us millions and millions of growth on the games, and that's kind of why I don't feel like one of the reasons, not saying like the only reason is because we're selling mad amounts of Pokemon games, but when you think about it, back in the day, to kind of get that adoption, it really helped out. It's like, hey, I got red version, you should get blue version, and it's really been one of those friend social things, but also brings us to the Wi-Fi experience. That Wi-Fi, I feel like once we got this major connectivity with the player search system in the 6th generation, we no longer needed dual versions. That's how I really feel about it, because, okay, now it kind of trivializes everything about the dual version, like, oh, all these exclusive Pokemon, or the exclusive experiences, or just being able to kind of like have this variety in the people that you're going to encounter and the Pokemon they're going to have, or also just kind of like the bragging rights, you know, like, oh, I got red version and picked my Charizard, well, I got blue version, Blastoise is better, you know, and then like, when it comes to that, I feel we just need one major core experience. Don't need those enhanced versions either, because I feel that we got to see how poorly that is working in a modern Pokemon time. Back when Pokemon was taking over the world, back in the late 90s, yeah, definitely made a lot of sense, and actually really added to the environment of Pokemon. But I feel now we could actually go without it. I don't think it'll take away from anything with Pokemon as well. I think that Game Freak is just kind of stuck on this idea that's like, oh, it's a two-version thing, it's a two-version thing. But when we compare it to the actual like sales numbers, because I don't think that's a greedy business decision, because a lot of people say it's like, oh, Game Freak only makes 2 copies now to try to get as much money as possible. But when you think about, like, less than 1% of people are actually going to be buying both versions, so they have everything. And again, with the Wi-Fi, it's even less necessary than now. So I think it's more about keeping hold of tradition, but I think if we're going for like this massive change like we've never seen before for the Nintendo Switch, then we don't need this tradition anymore. I don't think it takes away from Pokemon. If anything, it adds to those older Pokemon games. Like the original Red and Blue will still be Red and Blue into Yellow version, but we just get one large Pokemon Switch experience, and then everything after that is just going to be not an enhanced version, just like an entirely new experience, because we can go Generation 8 or a reboot or a Kanto thing or whatever's going on with the Nintendo Switch game. We could just have one big Pokemon game with that, have everything inside of it. That's gonna be awesome. Then we go into the 4th generation remakes. Remake Platinum version, more or less, because that was another weird thing about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And also when you just kind of look at all these games, Pokemon Sun and Moon, there's like no difference. You just have Solgaleo appear on the altar instead of Lunala. Like Pokemon X and Y actually justified having two versions for the 6th generation, but I think that could have ended with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. You just have Delta Emerald, or you don't have to remake that. You just give us the entire generation in one game. Then they could have made the 7th generation a separate one-game experience, because the story is effectively the exact same, and then kind of kick out all the other stuff going on. So, like I said, that it's a mix of having enough sales, enough online connectivity, enough people playing, to where we don't really need to gimmick anymore and that's why I find it weird that we've actually been gimmicking harder by doing the last, by just doing non-stop enhanced versions that are dual version. It's kind of cool, but that could also leave us some more opportunities for a Nintendo Switch game, because if there's just like one legendary Pokemon, or an odd number of legendary Pokemon, and they're all accessible in that game, I think it's going to feel better for the player experience. And even then, Pokemon Sun and Moon, okay, sure, there was the time change, so it wasn't really the exact same. What I meant is like the story was the same, and there really wasn't too much of a replacement. But even this, it sounded like a cool idea at first, but I started to like just not like it, because if I want to catch a Pokemon that was in a day, if I want to do a time-based event, my timing was always off because I got Moon version. I liked Lunala more. I felt like punished because I'd have to, either change my DS clock, which really ruins the gimmick since I'm playing in the day during the day for the Moon version, or it just felt like unnecessary. It seemed like they were really trying to push it, like, oh, this is going to justify your decision, and really, I think it wasn't that fantastic. And then when it came to Legendaries and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, there are a ton of legendaries, so like just splitting it down the middle, having it half and half, it makes it a lot more digestible for obtaining the legendary Pokemon. But if we get a larger experience on Nintendo Switch, I think that all the legendary Pokemon can fit in. And even then, like the dual version, it was really just mitigated, it felt very trivial, because then we got the event the next year, 2018. So right after Pokemon Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, it introduced all these exclusive legendary Pokemon. We got the year of legendary Pokemon, which gives us the other one for free. So we're not as overloaded with having to go out and catch every single legendary Pokemon, but that's not really what a lot of people are going to do. Like most people, if they want their one competitive legendary or a handful of competitive legendaries, they're not going to have to go and get all of them, which is also why I do feel that the Ultra Warp Ride was a bit successful, because if you're farming shiny Pokemon, or if you're going for a specific legendary, you're going to encounter legendary Pokemon that you weren't going for, and then you could eventually capture them faster than you thought. So I think that the way the system was integrated, it does make the legendary Pokemon a lot more obtainable, but there's also a natural split inside of them that I feel isn't really that necessary. You make the trio legendaries obtainable through their own methods, and then you make the larger legendaries obtainable through their own methods, and then the off legendaries, because like Giratina, Latios, Cresselia, they don't really belong anywhere. So that means you can have like 3 methods of catching legendary Pokemon, each having their own quirks about it, and that really wouldn't feel too overwhelming as long as you're being able to target the Pokemon that you're looking for, and then you can capture all of the Pokemon inside the game, since you're already receiving it regardless of the version that you obtained anyways, and it's for free through these obscure events and all this weird stuff. I don't even live near Target, so I missed out on the Entei Raikou, and we get to see what happens for the rest of it. So it was a cool idea, but then it's like, oh, now I'm still overwhelmed with legendary Pokemon, and it trivializes actually buying the game. So that means if you want to get a easier legendary Pokemon, you buy the game that you don't want. And that's why I feel that this actually, the more and more you go into it, all of the things that make a dual game or dual version cool don't really matter anymore. Like with the introduction of Wonder Trade and just like this massive online connectivity, it's like, okay, now there's really no point, because I could either trade with someone across the world, I can hit up, like, it's not that you have to have a friend or a sibling that ends up buying one of the opposite games so you can complete it. Now you just hit up a friend on Skype or Discord across the world, or you just go on Twitter, you go on Reddit, hey, who has this version? Boom, you got it. So it really makes it to where it's unnecessary. It's an unnecessary step, and then Wonder Trade means that you have access to potentially infinite. Any Pokemon could be delivered to you that way, so I don't really like it either. And then it just kind of like clouds things with how the generation split goes, and then, or not the generation split, just the game split goes. And then sometimes, it's always that stuck. You get the Pokemon that you want, and then you get the Pokemon that you don't want. You buy it for the legendary Pokemon, but then you realize all the cool Pokemon that you want don't exist in that game. I think I just don't appreciate the idea as much anymore. Like I said, back in the day, cool gimmick, really kind of sold and brought the community together. But now the community brings itself together through the online, so that's not really the craziest thing. And then when you look at it, like Black and White City, maybe when you could tell that this system was done, they should have ended it at Gen 5 when you actually break down Black and White City as well, because this was 2 different things that you needed to do to really kind of complete everything in an awkward, weird way. Black City was more about like battling, money, and items, and then White City was actually, or the White Forest was about finding like Pokemon and stuff like that. So the items also dropped, which was another weird thing. The resident correlating with Black City could drop the item instead of sell the item. Pokemon Black and White 2, they actually had like these trade items. That's another thing. Like if I wanted to get a Rhyperior, that means I needed Pokemon Black 2, whereas if I had Pokemon White 2, then that means my items were going to be different. I wasn't able to get Rhyperior, I had to find a friend, and then this isn't in as much of an online environment, so it was actually starting to get really cluttered with how much they were trying to force the version differences. Like, I feel Game Freak is now trying to justify having, like, keeping the version differences with these gimmicks that aren't working out anymore, and these more extremes that I'm not really that much of a fan of. If you look at the version exclusives in Pokemon Sun and Moon, it just didn't work out for me anymore. So it's like, it seems like as we were transitioning into these new games, into these new eras, it's like, oh hey, we need to really justify how to make this work again, and then it didn't. And then now we have like all these really overloaded features. Our remakes are 2 versions, and it doesn't seem like it tried to just fold it into a more cohesive experience. The enhanced versions are remaining to be 2, and I don't really like where any of this is going right now. So please comment down below what you think about it. Do you think that we should just keep it for the sake of that's habit? It's tradition that we've been doing this for so long. That's not really the worst thing, and that maybe you feel that Pokemon would lose something by getting rid of it, or you just fed up with this as well because you've noticed that they're just kind of doing unnecessary things to justify it, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to Nintendo Switch, we can just make one cohesive experience for everyone, all these people, and then there's still connectivity, so really no one's missing out, and then everyone feels like they're going to have a more full just kind of game together, and I think that's the best way of doing it. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.